What's up, guys? Simon Edwards at PumaCom here with Heat Seeker Sports, and you're watching the Underdog Big Board Draft Show. We're going to be drafting our first drafts in the Big Board for the 2024 season. I'm joined today by Spread Astaire. Spread joined me on a ton of these shows last season for the preseason when we were doing these Underdog best ball drafts. And so we're going to do another one, and we're also going to discuss all the coaching changes that have happened recently in the NFL. There's been a ton of coaching changes and some pretty significant ones, and we're going to break that down and give you our thoughts on how we think that that's going to impact the season. Before I get into that, let's do me a favor and hit the like button. I'm looking for about 20 likes to put out a shorter video later on. And make sure to subscribe to the YouTube page. We're going to be doing all sorts of best ball shows throughout the offseason and all sorts of breakdowns on what we think is happening in the NFL, like the combine and free agency, all those big catalysts that we have in the NFL throughout the year we'll be covering before the season starts. So make sure to subscribe to that YouTube page. Looking to get about 600 before the NFL season starts. We're at 506 or something around those lines right now. Spread, what's going on, man? Glad to have you on.
It's exciting, and I'm sure Roger Goodell's excited as well because he's achieved his goal. The NFL is now a year-round sport. We finished the Super Bowl on Sunday. It's now Friday, and we're looking ahead to next year, and we're already drafting. And before the show started, Simon, we talked about how for you and I, we feel this is a more advantageous time to draft, and we did well in the playoff pods by speculating and getting some of those things right, namely the Bills and the Rams, two teams we were really high on that when we were doing the drafts potentially could have missed the playoffs, right? We could have been completely all out. We rolled the dice, and it worked. We're going to do that here again today. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun because, once again, we're going to have some speculation. Namely, some big-name quarterbacks could be on the move. I mean, Kirk Cousins, Russell Wilson. For example, if Wilson ends up in Atlanta, I think that's much more attractive than if he ends up in Pittsburgh. And I think both of them are good options. So we get to look at these things. I mean, hey, even Baker's a free agent. Not necessarily. I think he'll be back in Tampa Bay. But boy, that could upset the apple cart if he went somewhere else. And we're going to look at these coaches too and see how much a new coach or an old coach might affect the fantasy output. Obviously, you get an offensive coordinator, maybe expect that scoring to go up. You get a defensive coordinator, a guy who likes to pound the ball, maybe we're looking at running backs and not quarterbacks.
Yeah, I think that as well. We've seen a huge shift in the coaching regimes this offseason, or not even offseason, but during these playoffs. We saw Bill Belichick and Pete Carroll both out as head coaches now. We've seen just a ton of turnaround with first-time head coaches and all sorts of changes going on right now. And it'll be fun to break down who we think are going to be the standouts in this new coaching class. One thing that I'm noticing, Spread, with his head coaches, I'm seeing a lot of defensive-minded coaches, just like you said. As far as defensive-minded coaches are going to probably be focused more on the run, but I see a ton of defensive-minded head coaches coming in. What do you think of that?
I was surprised. It felt like the NFL was moving towards the offensive play callers as the prototypical head coach, right? The Sean McVay, the Kyle Shanahan, the Matt LaFleur, right? It felt like, because of the way that these rules have changed, to have an offense is easier to translate year to year. Whereas a defense, we've seen teams be top defenses and then get average real quick. Look at the Chicago Bears. 3 years ago, that was one of the best defenses in the NFL. Adding Montez Sweat, they got up to average, right? But we can see how these things change from year to year. So I personally was surprised to see so many defensive head coaches get hired. It felt like the league was moving towards promoting these offensive play callers, but that wasn't the case in this coaching carousel this year.
Yeah. Another thing, we're seeing a lot of African-American head coaches this time around. One guy that's missing though is Eric Bieniemy, which is interesting to me because I figured he was going to Washington on, like almost not a guarantee, but like almost as to be the successor of, you know, it's escaping my name. What's the
Ron Rivera.
Yeah, Ron Rivera. Like I thought he was going to be the successor of Ron Rivera, but it turns out like he's out as an OC and he doesn't get the head coaching job. So I'm not sure, like what's going on with Bieniemy if he's going to end up being a coach this time around. But I thought he did a pretty good job with getting a lot out of Sam Howell this past season. I don't know if there's like a conflicting stuff that some players have said about being under him as a coach and whatnot. But yeah, so Bieniemy seems to be out as a coach for now. Be interesting to see if.
Let me touch on Bieniemy real quick.
Yeah.
His players didn't like him. The
Yeah.
offensive linemen were coming out against him, and he's a former running back, right? He never runs the ball. It's absolutely crazy. It reminds me of when Vlade Divac, who was one of the greatest European players ever, didn't draft the Euro player in Luka Doncic. It's like, what are you doing? So I specifically heard linemen say after the season, I don't want to play for him. He got me beat up all year. He's making me look bad because we're dropping back. Let me go forward. Let me attack these defensive linemen. He had me on the heels all season, and he made me look worse than I was. So the fact that the line turned on him and the players didn't like him, I think that had a big deal to do with it. And I think he had a great opportunity here. And once again, we're seeing with him that maybe that super abrasive personality that he has and his lack of flexibility, he had to have known this during the season, and he continued to do it. Do you see what I'm saying? So I think that could be some of the reasons why he's never caught on. The other thing is, under Reed, you're not going to get any of the credit. When you're the OC for Andy Reid, you're not calling plays, right? I'm sure you have a lot of input into this, and you're in charge of implementing those plays, but that doesn't give you the same level of respect as, say, like a Ben Johnson or Bobby Slowick down in Houston, right? Yeah. Two guys that have defensive mind head coaches, and we know that they're completely in charge of the offense and they're getting it done. So the problems with Bieniemy are around play calling and his relationship with his players. And at this point, I'm wondering if it's ever going to happen for him.
I don't think so at this point because he also has like some personal issues in the past. So I think it's just kind of an amalgamation of like all this different stuff that is just kind of preventing him to be a head coach. And this was probably about as good an opportunity as he would have gotten. And it turns out that instead the Washington Commanders turned to Dan Quinn to be their head coach, former DC of Dallas, and he also was the head coach of Atlanta a few years back. Thing with Dan Quinn, they made it to the Super Bowl when he was the head coach, but that was largely part of Kyle Shanahan being the offensive coordinator there. Kyle Shanahan went on to be the head coach of the San Francisco 49ers, and then Dan Quinn, of course, lost his job not long after that, ended up being the defensive coordinator of the Atlanta Falcons, or the Dallas Cowboys. So what do you think of Dan Quinn in this head coach role? I don't think it's like we said, like it's not going to be necessarily great for the offense of the Commanders, but what do you think in general of Dan Quinn as the head coach over here?
At first, I did not like it, but I've come around to it. One thing you get when you're hiring a head coach that's failed previously or lost their job before is they have mistakes to learn from. Whereas if you got a first-time guy, there's a huge learning curve for all the additional responsibilities of a head coach. So that's one thing that helps. The other thing I would say is that the talent in Dallas actually declined during his tenure, but the results did not. You look at the linebacking core and the defensive line that he had to start, and I felt that because of salary cap and paying Dak, they lost some of the talent there, but he was still able to get those same results. So he's still going to be able to dial it up on the defensive end. Interesting hire here. Now, Cliff Kingsbury comes in and Joe Witt Jr. Now, Joe Witt will be working under Quinn, and I don't think Quinn's going to call the plays. He's going to leave that to Witt, but he's going to have such a heavy influence on it. It's going to be a Dan Quinn-based defense. Cliff Kingsbury, right? I mean, we talk about make or break opportunities for Bieniemy. Another one going to the Commanders. Kingsbury was highly sought after. Goes to Arizona. He does all right. He does all right. His job was to develop Kyler, and I think that was a tough job. And I think he did a pretty good job of it. But overall, showed that he doesn't really have the head coaching chops. So some advantages there for the Commanders. If they do good, they're not going to lose their OC. Slowick and Johnson that I mentioned earlier, they're gone in the next year or two. So that's going to be something that Campbell and Ryans have to deal with. When you get these retreads like Fangio going up to Philadelphia, Kingsbury here, I don't have to worry about him getting hired away right away in the coaching cycle. So if the Commanders do draft Drake May, which I expect, he's going to get a good 2 to 3 years with them, and you won't have to worry about. I think that would have really hurt C.J. Stroud to lose Slowick right now, going into his second year. You're going to be able to get some continuity there. I do have some doubts, though, about whether or not the air raid will work in the NFL. So we're going to find out there. So I felt they played it safe with the head coaching hire, and then they really rolled the dice with the OC. And I have no idea how that's going to turn out. Personally, I think maybe a lot of it will have to do with how good, because I think they will get Drake May, how good Drake May actually is. I think there's a great chance he's going to be a top player, though, and that could make Kingsbury look a lot smarter than he looked in Arizona.
Yeah, I did. I do believe I heard some talk about Dan Quinn not being their first choice of head coach. I think it was Harbaugh was their first choice. I think they brought him in. There was talk about him being close to his brother in proximity. But yeah, Dan Quinn ends up being the head coach. And what Spread said with Cliff Kingsbury is going to be interesting to see what Kingsbury does this season for that offense. They have some good weapons there, and they're going to be getting in one of those rookie quarterbacks with the number 2 pick overall. So it'll be interesting to see who ends up there. And Cliff Kingsbury has, like a successful background in college ball. So it'll be good to have him kind of connecting with a rookie quarterback. Last time he did that was Kyler Murray. We saw Kyler Murray put up a couple good years before he started his little slump there. But yeah, it should be an interesting offense with the Washington Commanders. As far as the Seattle Seahawks, they have the number 16 pick overall, and they have hired Mike MacDonald, the Baltimore former defensive coordinator, and he is currently the youngest head coach in the league right now. So what are your thoughts here on Mike MacDonald, another defensive-minded coach?
Not a surprise because Seattle keeps their identity. They were, until Pete Carroll got there, an irrelevant franchise. And Pete Carroll and his ability to get the defense going is really what turned this franchise around. So they're going to stick with their identity. And why not? Because you're probably not you want to get into shootouts with Shanahan and McVay. So I think it's smart that they're going at a completely different route. MacDonald, what an exciting candidate here. When the Ravens lost Wink Martindale, I thought that was going to be rough for them. I was really considering Martindale to be one of the top 5 DCs. He goes to New York. He does very good there with what I thought was a below average roster in his first season. Things have blown up now. But I don't think that was due to his coaching prowess. That was just a personality clash between him and head coach Brian Daboll, who supposedly weren't even talking for the last 8 weeks of last season. So I think that they did a good job here. I know that Dan Quinn was mentioned, but I feel like John Schneider needed to make his own mark. And by bringing Dan Quinn in, who had been the coach of the Seattle defense, the Legion of Boom, who actually won the Super Bowl, I felt like they would kind of, still be under that Carroll shadow. This was Schneider's chance to really establish himself as the true leader of the organization. We already know that he's great at draft picks. So if he nails this pick, it should be exciting for Seattle fans moving forward. And this is the one team I was not surprised that they went defensive minded, because I feel it fits the personality of the organization that they've built so far.
Yeah. And he brings in Ryan Grubb, the University of Washington offensive coordinator. and Aiden Dirty as the defensive coordinator. He's a former Dallas D-line coach. But the Ryan Grubb hire is interesting. They had a pass-heavy offense over where he was the former coach. But what are your thoughts on that spread? What are your thoughts on how that's going to affect the team?
What that said to me is, and I could be completely wrong, but if Penix is there at 16, that's who they're going to take.
Yeah.
That's what I saw. You hire the UW coordinator, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him move up and make sure they get him.
Yeah.
That was my main takeaway from that coordinator. And then they hired Dirday, but we know that. Well, we don't know that. Has it been announced? I'm just assuming MacDonald's going to call the defense.
Yeah, I would guess so. Or at least have a heavy influence, just like Dan Quinn will.
Yeah. Well, Quinn is not going to call the defense though.
Right.
He's announced that. I haven't heard anything from MacDonald, but I'm assuming that he's essentially the defensive coordinator, and Dirday is going to continue to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. So it should be interesting there. We move on to the Atlanta Falcons. They have the number 8 overall pick. They brought in another defensive-minded coach in Raheem Morris. He is the former Los Angeles Rams defensive coordinator. He also had a stint as the Tampa Bay head coach and an interim head coach for Atlanta back in 2020. He rejoins Atlanta as their head coach. And there was a lot of talk about Bill Belichick coming into Atlanta and being the head coach, but they ended up with Raheem Morris, and it's going to have a new look with his offensive coordinator being Zach Robinson, former Rams quarterback coach, and the defensive coordinator is going to be Jimmy Lake from the University of Washington as well. He was the head coach of the University of Washington. What are your thoughts on this coaching staff here, Spread?
The reason Belichick did not go to Atlanta is he was unwilling to relinquish player personnel control. Mm-hmm. And as much as I want to see Belichick in the league, I believe that's a smart move. This is not 1989 or whenever Bill Parcells said, if you want me to cook the dinner, I got to buy the groceries. Right. It's not that way anymore. These teams' front offices have expanded 5 to 10 times in the scope of personnel and the amount of money that they spend on scouting. And to expect one person to do both, I believe is kind of foolhardy. So him and Vrabel both kind of knocked themselves out of consideration for multiple jobs by demanding that player personnel control. Now, will someone get desperate next year and offer them? We'll see. I was really surprised that neither of them got hired. On to Morris, another one that was fairly surprising to me right off the bat, but then you look at Dan Quinn, and it's kind of the same idea, right? Although he didn't have nearly the success that Quinn did in Tampa, that Quinn had in Atlanta, Morris is going to learn from his previous mistakes. He was trying to coach Jameis Winston, which, hey, I don't know how high your ceiling is with Jameis Winston as your quarterback. And I believe that bringing Zach Robinson over is huge, because 99% chance they're going a different direction at quarterback. And I think although I'm hearing them, in the mix for Russ and in the mix for Justin Fields, I wouldn't be surprised if they drafted someone. And with what Zach Robinson's done under McVay for the last 3 years, you got to think that he is going to be in a great spot to help develop these young players and going to bring an innovative, modern system, right? He's not going to be like John Gruden rushing out a fullback and trying to run schemes from 1995. So overall, even though I was a little underwhelmed at first, it seems like it's a good hire when you consider the fact that you're bringing Zach Robinson in too. Defense is already pretty talented. You got to think that Morris is going to get them going. If Robinson can live up to his expectations and be one of these next hot offensive coordinators, it's an easy division to win. You got to think that Atlanta's got a great chance to turn it around. So another one, underwhelmed at first, and now I'm more impressed. And when I'm looking at these coordinators, I think that Robinson is more of a sure bet than Kingsbury, because Robinson runs more of the modern NFL style. Kingsbury runs the air raid. So I don't know X's and O's as much. I have a friend who's much better at it than I am, and he was explaining to me how in college, because the hashes are inside a little more, the air raid works so much better, because when you're running 4 wide, you have more room in between them. He said in the NFL, when you try and run it with the hashes closer to the sideline, a lot of times those four wide receivers can get bunched up, and it's not as effective as it was in college. So I have some concerns about air raid, but I have no concerns about the scheme that Robinson's built in. This McVay system is tried and true. He's under Mike Shanahan, so they love to run the ball, right? They run to establish the pass, kind of the opposite way. That was Bill Walsh's idea originally, and Shanahan took that. So you got to think that they're coming in with the modern offense that's going to benefit players such as Bijan Robinson, because I think he's going to want to run the ball a lot. And remember how Todd Gurley was? I would not be surprised if they just run Bijan in the ground the next 2 or 3 years, and maybe he's not even good by his second contract. But adding Robinson to the mix just moved Bijan up my board about a round.
Yeah.
Because he's got to, you got to say he was one of the biggest disappointments of our first round pick that didn't suffer an injury, right? Like, obviously Nick Chubb was worse, but of all the players that played every game, I thought that Bijan was the most disappointing of the top 12 picks that we had last year.
I think so too. And all your points, agree with those. And I do think that just any move from away from Arthur Smith is probably an upgrade for a lot of these offensive weapons on the Falcons, who we've seen just wasting away as like top 10 picks in Kyle Pitts and Drake London and Bijan. And now they have an opportunity, hopefully, to get a little bit more of a chance to prove themselves. And Atlanta gets another top 10 pick this season.
Do you think they'll go quarterback draft, or do you think they're going to trade for one? Because right now they're the number one name. If you look at the odds, they're the number one name to land a veteran, whether it's Fields, Wilson, the top two names going there. But they're even in the Cousins sweepstakes as well. Which route do you think they'll go? If I were them, because when you bring in a new coaching staff, it's kind of like a new lease on life. I think I would go with the rookie. But the division's winnable right now. So if they were to bring in a Russ or a Cousins, can't hate that idea. You got to think if they were to bring in one of those veterans, even Fields, would you consider them to be the favorite to win the NFC South? It's going to be either them or Tampa.
I'd love to see Fields end up there, honestly. And we have the like the Zach Robinson being the former Rams quarterback coach, so maybe he can help mold Fields a little bit as the offensive coordinator. But I think the overall situation with Atlanta, to me, it would make sense to bring in a guy like Fields, just because we're looking at Carolina Panthers. They're just a mess, and they have a new head coach and a new offensive coordinator. We're looking at the
Saints, who are dead this year. They didn't even bother getting a new coach because they already know this year's screwed, because we have Derek Carr, and Derek Carr's washed at age 34. So for all the people who love the Jets this year, right? He's 40 years old.
The Bucs just lost their OC, so
which is probably a bigger loss than I realized. I didn't realize this guy's resume was so impeccable. They're Canales, like the quarterbacks that he's developed with Russell Wilson, Geno Smith, and now Baker Mayfield. He has a proven track record at this point. I mean, it's pretty solid. So losing him as the offensive coordinator over there, they might lose Mike Evans as well. He's going to be a free agent unless they franchise tag him. I would imagine, right, Spread? Like he's probably unless he decides to come back and he enjoyed playing with Baker. But hopefully those two can keep the chemistry, and the offense can keep the chemistry without Canales. But I mean, it's setting up for Atlanta to look like in a really good spot with all these top 10 picks that they've had over the last few years, and then having a new coaching staff come in. All they got to do is not screw it up, basically. Yeah. So let's see where Atlanta goes, and kind of pivoting this towards us drafting here. You got, with what we've seen so far, like I said, Zach Robinson, that's a huge upgrade to me for Robinson. I mean, like I said, I could see a Todd Gurley season all over again. Mm-hmm. And then we just got to decide, is it going to be a veteran or is it going to be a rookie? Because I'll tell you what, for best ball purposes, I like Russell Wilson a lot better in Atlanta than I do in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Being inside and quality of competition, right? Do I want to go against the Saints have a good defense, right? But you get Carolina, you get these are pretty good defenses. But if you go to Pittsburgh, you're going against Cleveland, you're going against Baltimore, and Cincinnati. Although we love Burrow in that offense, they sneaky have a pretty good defense too. So, if I'm drafting Russell Wilson today, I want him to sign with Atlanta.
Yeah, I think that, like I'd want him in Atlanta too. The only thing I'd be nervous about with Russ Wilson is, how's he going to mesh with that coaching staff? Like, is he going to be coming in, making all sorts of demands and stuff like he did when he first went into Denver? It kind of took Sean Payton to rein him in a bit and get him back on track. But Raheem Morris being a defensive-minded coach, do you think that would have a negative impact or a positive impact on Russ?
I think it would be positive. And I also think that I'm trying to think of the right word, cachet or capital within the organization is so much less.
Yeah.
If you look at what happened with Denver, right? They felt they were one piece away. They had that elite defense that Fangio built. And we've seen this before, right? So let's keep that in mind, Miami. We've seen Fangio leave teams, and the defense goes from top 5 to around 15, 16 with the same players. So they thought, hey, we're one player away. We just need the quarterback. I think they overvalued Judy and Cortland Sutton a little bit, right? Maybe the weapons weren't as good as they thought. But they felt they were one piece away and that he was the piece. So he walks in there with all the cash, all the capital, whatever you want to call it. It's no longer the case. He's coming to play on a veteran minimum. He's pretty much been run out of town, and I would say there's 21 teams that if Russ's agent called, they just, no, we're not interested. Good luck, though. Right? Yeah. It's not like, I would say 2 years ago, where if he was a free agent, he would have got offers from, I'd say, 15 teams. Now I'd say he's probably got offers from 5.
Yeah.
And there's another 4 who may consider it if things don't go their way. But with the lack of cash that he's going to have coming into the organization, I don't think that's going to be an issue for him at all. I think this was a great learning experience. I'm not worried about his attitude as much as I'm worried about, is he just physically done? He never had the rocket arm. He's not a huge guy. He's not going to sit in the pocket and pull you apart. So if you take away that mobility and that ability to make plays on the run, extend plays, right, which is what a lot of the original Lit Russ Cook came from, was the idea that they were calling these really basic plays and he was turning them into these huge plays through his escapability and kind of the backyard football stuff with DK and Tyler. My concern for Wilson is more the physical decline more than the attitude.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, given that stance, I kind of would lean Fields or a rookie. I think would probably be my favorites for to end up as a quarterback in Atlanta, honestly.
Yeah. And that might be the direction they go, because when you have that new coaching staff, there is a little bit of a grace period. Right? You shouldn't be on the hot seat after 1 year unless it's an absolute disaster.
You would think so, unless you're the Carolina Panthers. And we saw Frank Reich get a very short leash on the Panthers last season, ended up losing his job halfway through the year. Tepper has just been on a firing rampage with coaches, and now Dave Canales comes in there as the head coach. He, like we talked about earlier, got Baker Mayfield on track as a potential comeback player of the year. He didn't end up winning the award, but he was nominated. And Canales had that success with Russ, Geno, and Baker. And the question is, can he salvage Bryce Young? And it looks like he's going to be the play caller as well as the head coach. So offensive coordinator, he brought in Brad Idzik, will not be calling plays. It looks like Dave Canales will be calling the plays. What are your thoughts on this move there, Spread?
Obviously, Canales as a coach is a fantastic hire. The question is going to continue to be around that organization. Is this Dan Snyder 2.0? Is David Tepper a man who succeeded in the cutthroat world of business but doesn't understand that sports is not business? and relationships matter. Um, Patience matters. There's a lot of things that have just pointed to this guy not necessarily having the temperament to be a proper NFL owner. And what we don't like when we're doing this is the meddling. And it feels like we've got a lot of meddling from Mr. Tepper, not to mention some regrettable quotes as well. Coming out saying, well, we wanted the number 2 pick and we would have taken CJ with number 2. Well, you should have taken him at number 1, right? I mean, it's a little, if you have the number 3 pick and you're saying we would have taken CJ, well, that's fine. Okay. Right? Cool. Yeah. But you had the number 1 pick. You had the opportunity to do it. So I don't want to hear that now. I wonder if Canales is hooking himself to the wrong boat, but at the same time, there's only 32 of these jobs available. If we fast forward, if we were to rewind 1 year, I liked Bryce Young as a prospect more than CJ Stroud. I thought that Bryce was just going to get things done. So you got to think that he inherits a situation with a lot of potential. It'll be how bad is the actual organization being run for him to turn it around. They got to fix that line quick because with the smaller quarterback who's not super fast, they're going to have to learn how to protect him. Also, maybe trading away your best receiver wasn't the best idea. So a lot of problems around that Panthers franchise. And if Canales fails, I probably won't downgrade him as much as I will. Just this is a poor organization run by a person who doesn't have the temperament to be an NFL owner.
Yeah, exactly. And, we saw that McCown, at least like CJ Stroud, and he ended up getting fired as I believe he's the quarterback coordinator or passing game coordinator, wasn't he? Spread like he had a role in that coaching staff for Carolina, and he ends up losing his job too. I thought McCown, like with his knowledge of plays and just the demand for him a couple years ago, I think Houston wanted to hire him at one point in a significant role, and then he ends up getting hired on the Panthers along with Frank Reich. I was surprised to see him just kind of disappear. I'm interested in seeing what happens with him in the future, but obviously ended up in a bad spot with Tepper, suffered the same consequences as Frank Reich. And, now we hope that Dave Canales is able to do something with Bryce Young. But, yeah, they had an opportunity to draft C.J. Stroud, and they didn't do it. And I think a large part of that was because of Tepper.
And you look at the quotes, right? If I was Tepper, right, and we all do this is so much fun, right? What I would have said, well thought out, right? But, hey, Bryce is our guy. Yeah, CJ had a better rookie year, right? But we're drafting for careers. Right? And we still see the potential, and he's our guy right here. It's just weird to come out and say that.
Yeah. So moving on to the Los Angeles Chargers. This one had probably the biggest splash at head coach, bringing in Jim Harbaugh, Michigan's head coach. And there was a lot of controversy with Harbaugh in Michigan. He was suspended for a few games and all sorts of stuff going on. But also, them having to deal with like constantly recruiting and all that kind of stuff now in the college level, I think it made it more appealing than ever for Harbaugh to get back in the NFL. And, he takes over as the head coach. He took San Francisco to the Super Bowl a few years ago. When he was in San Francisco, he had a 44-19-1 record. And he brings along with him offensive coordinator Greg Roman, from formerly Baltimore's offensive coordinator, and defensive coordinator Jesse Minter, which was the Michigan defensive coordinator. What are your thoughts on the moves here with Harbaugh?
As a Raiders fan, I absolutely hate it. The guy's never failed.
Yeah.
He won at University of San Diego, right, which is a small school. Then he goes to Stanford. That's so hard to win at Stanford. Do you understand how hard it is to get into Stanford? This isn't Miami. He wins at Stanford. Then he goes to San Francisco, takes over just a terrible organization. And here's what really worries me as a Raiders fan. Didn't do a lot of changes to that roster. He came in with pretty much the same roster that had gone 4-12 or 5-11 the year before. and got them to the playoffs right off the bat. So Harbaugh's going to be successful. The question is for how long. Being up here in Northern California, obviously got to hear a lot about the frustrations of working with him. And I remember thinking that Jed York was a complete idiot when he got rid of him. And he ended up, now he found Shanahan. So he's redeemed and he's able to do it because Shanahan also looks like it's a lot easier to work with. So I'm almost positive that Harbaugh will be successful. And it's so disappointing for me because every year I fade the Chargers. Every year, everybody loves the Chargers, and I go, no. One of my biggest bets on the offseason, it was either the top amount wagered or the second most amount wagered, was the Chargers under 9.5 wins. And it was a staple for me because I just said this team never meets expectations. They have a bunch of big names. They don't stay healthy. They have a cheap training staff. They have cheap practice facilities. And they have a bunch of big name players on defense, but then they surround them with below average players because they manage their cap like an NBA team where they just get 3 big stars and then they just fill it in with vet minimum style guys. But I don't think that's going to happen this year. I just think that he's the type of guy that gets everybody around him better because not only is he good at designing plays, what he's really good at is motivation and teaching technique. So it's even though he's a former quarterback, he makes your defense better. I've never seen a former quarterback that's so good at turning a defense around. And so you got to give him credit. You know what, Simon? It reminds me of John Elway. And they say, remember John Elway when he was the GM of the Broncos? Mm-hmm. He got every position right, especially on the defense. He was one of the best defensive drafters ever. And they asked him, well, why do you think that is? And they go, well, what did he do his whole career? He watched defenders. He wasn't watching film of other offenses or other quarterbacks. Right. He was watching defenders. Oh, I'm worried about him. So he knew what to look for that a quarterback would not want to see. So he got all these guys that a quarterback would be worried about. He didn't know how to judge a quarterback because he said, I'm John Elway. Right? When have I ever spent time on tape watching a quarterback? So Harbaugh, for him to do that, I think is just fantastic for him to be that sharp. Here's the real wild card in here is Greg Roman. Now, Greg Roman's worked with Harbaugh in the past, so that's got to be a plus because they're coming in on the same page and the pecking order is clearly defined. The reason that surprised me, though, is what is Greg Roman known for? His success with running mobile quarterbacks. In fact, that was the huge draw for John Harbaugh to bring him in. Was he said, I saw what you did with Kaepernick. I want you to do that with Lamar. So you would think that, right? Like if I'm thinking, where would I want Greg Roman? I want him with Justin Fields, right? Or Jaden Daniels, right? One of these players. So it's really cool and interesting, and I can't doubt Harbaugh. But I wonder how Roman will do with the traditional drop back passer. I don't want to see RPOs with Justin Herbert. Yeah. Drop back and let that thing sling. So overall, you said it. It's the most impactful coach, and I think the Chargers go. I don't know how many they won last year, but I think they at least 10 wins. They're going to be in double-digit wins. They're going to be in the playoffs, and for the rest of the AFC West, it was the worst thing that could happen because Harbaugh's going to make all those average players so much better.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we also got an issue with these Chargers where they're probably going to run into a bunch of cap issues this season, and they got to decide what's going to happen with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. I think they can probably only keep one of them, right? Right, Spread?
Yeah, but I'm not too worried about that.
Yeah. Now
I think they replace him. Now I know for fantasy that everybody loves those guys, but Keenan Allen's getting pretty close to the end, and Mike Williams gives you 5 games a year. Yeah. So I mean,
yeah.
I think they'd be fine moving on with both of them.
Yeah.
Look what Mahomes is doing.
Yeah.
With average receivers, these guys they can get it done. I don't think you spend a lot of money there on wide receiver if you're the Chargers. I think you start drafting them and developing them properly. I won't be surprised if that guy Quentin Johnston, who we all loved, ends up being good under Harbaugh. I mean, we'll see. That looked about as lost cause as it could possibly be. If he can turn him around, just give him Coach of the Year right now.
Do you think that Marvin Harrison could potentially fall to them at the number 5 pick?
No.
Yeah. You think he gets drafted before that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe. I'm trying to think. I mean, how would that happen? It would be New England takes Jaden Daniels at 3, or someone trades up to take Daniels at 3, and Joe Alt goes 4. Who's at number 4 right now? Do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was just wondering. I was just going to ask you the same thing.
I'll look it up right now.
Yeah.
I guess there's a small chance.
Yeah, because
Can you imagine if that happened?
dude, they're at number 5. Like it could totally happen. I think. Number 4, I'm seeing Arizona Cardinals. So everyone's picking the Arizona Cardinals to pick them. But do you think that? Do you think that they would trade up to get him? Like, do you think that because their big missing piece is going to be, at least on the offense, is going to be finding a wide receiver to kind of take over for like these.
The good thing for the Chargers though is this is the deepest wide receiver draft in memory, and you could probably grab one in the second round.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So even if Harrison's gone, that'd be interesting, right? So let's assume that quarterbacks go top 3. Arizona, that would be a tough decision between the best tackle and the best wide receiver. I mean, both of them are slated as can't miss. So let's just use that as our assumption. What would you rather have, Simon? A top 5 left tackle or a top 5 wide receiver? I might go tackle.
Yeah, if you got those issues that Kyler Murray's had, I mean, I would probably, because they got Marquise Brown already, right?
Moore is a good player. You can pick these guys up, and good quarterbacks can make average wide receivers good. Yeah, I guess you're right. I guess it's a greater possibility than happens because you get 3 quarterbacks, or Arizona takes a tackle, which is what I would do if I were them. And then, but fair warning, I'm the one that blasted Cincinnati for taking Jamar Chase over Penei Sewell. And both of them ended up being fantastic players, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Kind of the same argument, but you got to think that Joe Burrow wouldn't be the same if he didn't have that instant connection with Chase that helped him out. So, yeah, you know what? Chargers at 5 got a chance to get Harris. Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
I mean, if he gets drafted there, is he a top first-round pick in best ball?
Second round, I'd say. Like, I don't know if I'm sure the hype would get him to the first round, but yeah, because I mean we've seen what Keenan Allen consistently gets drafted, and Mike Williams consistently get drafted in the second, third rounds, and they obviously have injury-prone labels, and they always end up missing several games during the year. But Marvin Harrison, for the pedigree that he has and the hype around him, I wouldn't be surprised to see him creep into the first.
Let's assume you're at pick 11. Marvin Harrison gets drafted to the Chargers. Would you draft Marvin Harrison or Devontae Adams?
Harrison.
you would, huh?
Yeah, just
crazy.
It's got the mystery box appeal to it. I'll take what's in the box, instead of the guaranteed thing. But we've seen Aiden O'Connell. Do you really want Aiden O'Connell throwing to Devontae Adams? You know what I mean? And we'll talk about that next. I mean, that's our next.
Yeah, let's just segue right into it.
Yeah, so we got the Raiders. They got the number 13 pick. Head coach Antonio Pierce was hired as full-time coach now, and it was really, really pushed by the players to make that move. He is a motivational coach. He brings on Luke Getsy of the Chicago Bears as the offensive coordinator. Getsy moves on from the Chicago as the offensive coordinator of the Raiders. This is another potential team that Fields could end up on. I don't know what your thoughts are there with him and Getsy, their history. There was some turbulence there, but also, they seem to get along towards the end of it. But what do you think there on this team in general and the thinking of what's going to happen with the offense here?
So first of all, I love the hire. And I believe that when you evaluating this hire, you have to evaluate it with the fact that it allowed you to keep Patrick Graham as your defensive coordinator. And he's probably going to get hired away from us here pretty soon. But you look at what he built with that offense, and it's the first time, I would say, since the mid-2000s that the Raiders have had an offense that I could be proud of. So you bring in, number one, I have no problem with the motivational coach as my number one guy, right? Like the ideal is he turns out to be in Tomlin or a Vrabel or a guy that just gets stuff done. Let's go to the offensive side. At first, I wasn't sure of the hire. And I'll tell you what, I don't think there's any way that Justin Fields goes to Las Vegas. And here's the reason why. When they hired Getsy, I think when you make that hire, you're saying nobody could have made Justin Fields good. The guy can't get through one read, right? He should have Greg Roman as offensive coordinator, and we should be running him into the ground and not worried about re-signing him and just, treat him like a running back that can throw the ball. So I'm sure that he pitched to them, hey guys, if you let me run my offense for real, like I did in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers, with the quarterback that I can get through 3 progressions, it's going to look a lot different than it did with Mr. One and Done Reed. So when them hiring, I think that was like a referendum against Fields, because most likely you're going to have a young quarterback. And let's be fair, he failed to develop Justin Fields. Yeah. That was his job as the offensive coordinator, and he failed to do it. So the referendum will be, is this guy simply not it? For example, Simon, if I was Johnny Manziel's offensive coordinator, does that mean I'm a bad offensive coordinator? I don't think anyone could have got that guy to be good, right? You can reincarnate Vince Lombardi. The guy wasn't watching film, he wasn't working hard, and he was doing drugs. Right? Jamarcus Russell, same deal. Like do you remember the old story about Jamarcus?
Just lazy.
They sent him home. They said, go watch this tape.
Yeah.
And they didn't put anything on it. It was like cartoons or something. And he shows up the next day and they go, oh, what'd you think of the tape? He goes, yeah, it was good. I learned a lot, right? Let them know you didn't throw it in the VCR or whatever they used back then, right? Because we put a bunch of cartoons on this tape. So that's why I don't think Fields will end up there. Overall, I do like the hire, but with Harbaugh, with Reed and Mahomes being in their prime, and Harbaugh going to Los Angeles, you got to look at this as a 2 to 3 year rebuild. I think they'll be patient, and it signals to me that they're more likely to draft a quarterback than to be in the sweepstakes for a free agent. The only free agent that I could see would be Russ. And here's the deal. You're getting him on a veteran minimum, so you can still draft a quarterback, right? It doesn't take you out of the quarterback sweepstakes like getting Kirk Cousins would. And probably pretty motivated to stick it to Denver, right? So you kind of get that built in. I've already been scouting. I've scouted against the Chiefs. I've scouted against the Chargers. It's not much of a move for my family. So maybe Russ there. But other than that, I think that they understand with this hire that their timeline's 2 to 3 years away, and they're going to draft and develop. So overall, I like the hire, though. A little disappointed that Harbaugh ended up in Los Angeles, but I wanted Pierce there, and I wanted to keep Patrick Graham.
Yeah. So we've gone through about 6 teams, only 2 offensive-minded head coaches so far. We're going to get into a few more offensive-minded head coaches. Before we do that, make sure to hit the like button. Looking for 20 likes to put out some shorter hit videos a little bit later on with specific players we can target and stuff like that. And also make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Looking for 600 subscribers. We're at about 500 now. So let's get there, within the next couple months or so. And also, Spread, I think it's time to try to jump into one of these underdog drafts. And if you're watching this and you want to get into early drafting for the NFL, make sure to open up an Underdog account. Use the promo code SEEK. They're going to match you up to $100 on your first deposit. You can also reach out to me on Twitter at PumaCom, and I'll hook you up with some rankings so that you can have some rankings to load into your Underdog and have a little bit of guidance when you're drafting your teams there. So, Spread, let's jump into a big board here. Let's see. I'm going to go to the lobby. We'll see how long it's going to take for this to fill, and we'll cover some more coaching while we're waiting. But let's get into this now because I'm not sure how long it's going to take to fill. I'm going to hit.
Pretty close. We're waiting for 3. Yeah, I just entered. We're waiting for 3.
Okay, perfect.
All right, we're only waiting on 1 now.
Yeah, 1 more to start.
We're starting. Wow.
Damn.
People are drafting. I thought we might be here for a half hour. All right, I'm at pick 5. You're at pick 9.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's interesting. I thought for sure that we would have time to cover a couple more coaches, but let's cover it. I guess while we're waiting on this uh, on this draft to start here, we got the Tennessee Titans next. They bring on head coach Brian Callahan, formerly of the Cincinnati Bengals. He was the offensive coordinator. Obviously, they've had a lot of success on the offense, but they have a lot of weapons. The Tennessee Titans do not. And he helped Cincinnati to 2 AFC title games and a Super Bowl. And, you know, he joins them. He's worked with Peyton Manning, Matthew Stafford, Derek Carr, Joe Burrow. The question is going to be is what can he do with Will Levis? What are your thoughts on that hire?
I was really surprised that they fired Mike Vrabel. And that wasn't due to his coaching expertise. It was CeeDee Lamb at number 1.
Wow.
You got to be kidding me. If I'm a number 2, I'm loving life right now. I'm sorry, that threw me off. Going back to Callahan, feels like a good hire. Now, remember, his dad was the coach of my favorite team back when they were the Oakland Raiders and led them to the Super Bowl the year after John Gruden left, and failed in that endeavor. But that was tough, right? Did make some mistakes though, not changing the audibles. I don't know how that happened. Jamar Chase over Tyreek Hill. Are you as surprised as I am by these?
Not really by Chase, honestly, because I think obviously Chase was impacted by injuries this year, and we've seen Tua it's kind of just like crash and burn towards the end of the seasons. So I'm not really sure he can hold up a whole season and support a guy like Tyreek throughout the season. But I don't hate the Chase call over Hill because we don't know what's happening with T. Higgins yet either. So there's some of that mystery box again with Jamar Chase and the potential upside.
All right, Simon, I got a phone call real quick. I'm going to mute myself.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so we're coming up here on my pick at the 9th overall pick. We got Bijan still on the board. We got Amon-Ra St. Brown. I like both those guys. So it'll be interesting to see which one of those falls to me. I don't necessarily want to draft Puka Nacua this early, so I think I would lean more towards Gibbs as my first overall pick. Let's see. So I got Puka and Gibbs is ADP of 9 and 10. I think I'm going to go with Gibbs here. And we're going on to pick 10. Puka Nacua is the next one that I have available. And then in the 11th ADP, we got A.J. Brown. Still trying to figure out strategy and stuff here because this is my first time drafting this season. So I'm getting a look at ADP and everything for the first time, kind of getting a feel. Glad that we just coming off the season, so we got all this stuff fresh in my mind, and I can kind of make judgment calls, just based on what we've seen throughout the season. Spread is coming up here pretty soon. Like he is, let's see, who did Spread take? I
took Justin Jefferson.
Okay, yeah. So Spread got a great pick on his first.
At number 5?
Yeah, that's crazy.
I like Jefferson more than Chase and Lamb.
Yeah, same here. Yeah. Now, when you say he was crazy over Tyreek, I think he's crazy over taking him over Justin Jefferson.
You like Jefferson more than Tyreek?
I think I do, man. I just think that the offense, do you think that Kirk Cousins is coming back? What do you think is happening at quarterback there?
It's tough to tell, isn't it?
Yeah.
I would think that they would bring him back.
Yeah.
When making that pick, I'm assuming they'd bring him back because I don't want him with the rookie. Not where they're drafting. Let me pull this back up.
Yeah,
if drafting at. Oh, never mind. They're drafting at 11. They can get an okay guy there.
Yeah, if it's Kirk that's coming back, then I like the pick better than Tyreek or Brown. I mean Chase. But I mean it's just kind of depends on how free agency shakes out and what we see with Kirk Cousins, because that's going to be the major decision maker for me. I'm sitting here at pick 16, Kyron Williams has fallen to me. I'm going to draft Kyron Williams here.
So you went
And
two running backs to start, huh?
yeah, it's weird because I like to draft those wide receivers, but maybe I'll be able to find some value in wide receivers. And like I said, this is my first time drafting, so I'm kind of doing it on the fly and doing it as I'm talking through a show. Like those picks kind of worked best for me. I didn't want to draft Nico Collins there. I didn't want to draft A-Chain. Well, actually, I wouldn't mind A-Chain, but I didn't want to draft DJ Moore there. I don't know what's happening with his quarterback situation. We know that
think it's going to be better, don't you?
Yeah, it probably.
I think that's why he's so high on this board.
Yeah.
Boy, I got some good options here. 19 seconds. I don't want to mess this up. All right, so I like Ayuk. I like Barkley. Now, let me look at the rest of the running back. So if I don't take Barkley here, don't you think it's a significant drop off?
Yeah.
All right, let me pull this. I got 3 seconds left. Never mind. Barkley draft. Ah, dang it. I ended up.
Oh, they gave you Nico? Oh, no.
Ayuk.
Oh, Ayuk?
I had Ayuk up there too as well.
Yeah. I don't hate Ayuk, but I do think that he's probably more of a third, fourth round. What do you think of that spread? Do you think that his ADP is way too high here?
No, I actually liked him. I had him queued up ahead of Barkley. So my queue was Ayuk, then Barkley, and then I just kind of talked myself into it, just looking at the couple left, right? Because look how many wide receivers I have that I still like on the board.
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
there's
Whereas
a lot of
running back. It feels like it's fallen off a little bit here after Saquon. I mean, Etienne's good. I have concerns about health. Pacheco, I like Pacheco a lot. That's another one that could be good.
Yeah.
Rashad White, we'll see if Baker doesn't come back. That's going to be a rough one. James Cook is much more attractive now that Joe Brady's the offensive coordinator. I love Kenneth Walker. I'll go back to him, right? That's probably who I'm targeting here. Also like myself some Jacobs, but he's a free agent as well. I know it says Las Vegas next to his name, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so. All right, so I'm looking here. Now, I could get lucky, but Saquon would have to go past two more people. Well, only one more person now. If I get Saquon, I'm going to be so happy. What do you think of Laporta being so high? Tight end 1 now?
I think that's a little bit too high for him.
Yeah.
Because as far as his receiving yards, he didn't even crack 1,000 in that first season. It takes a lot for a rookie tight end to crack it. He had a really good rookie tight end season. Obviously, he was a major get if you drafted him last season. You did a great job, but drafting him in the third round seems way too early for me.
Yeah.
So we're coming up.
I ended up going 3 wide receivers. I don't like it, but
okay.
Since I missed out on the premium running backs, I'm gonna just try and run it up here.
Yeah.
With some of these guys that are a little lower on the board. Like, look how low Nick Chubb is. Running back 19. Does that seem crazy to you?
Yeah, Nick Chubb coming off that ACL tear though, like it looked like a devastating knee injury, man. So I don't.
That must be it. But
okay, so I'm gonna go with a quarterback here. I'm gonna go with Jalen Hurts. I think. I like his situation. We can talk about the situation.
Is that the first quarterback off the board?
I think Josh Allen got. Where's Josh Allen at? Did Josh Allen get taken already? He had to have. Yeah, Josh Allen's off the board already.
Who got Allen? I can't see it all.
Let's see.
Let me pull mine up. Oh, I'm sorry. So yours is cutting off the last couple guys.
Yeah, let me.
So when Josh Allen, then Jalen Hurts. All right.
So now with the Philadelphia Eagles, I like the move that they made bringing in Kellen Moore. And I like the defensive side, too. They brought in Vic Fangio. Kellen Moore, of course, had a lot of success with Dallas as the offensive coordinator. Then he moved on to the Chargers. When he was with the Chargers, he dealt with a ton of injuries. But what I hated about the Eagles last year was their offensive and defensive coordinators. And I said it like throughout the season, how I didn't think that the Eagles would be able to adjust with the coordinators that they had. and then it turned out that they just collapsed at the end of the season. And now I feel a lot more comfortable with the team drafting, or I'm not drafting, but bringing in Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio. I think that's going to be an improvement on the offense and the defense. What are your thoughts there, Spread, on these moves that the Eagles made?
The main reason I like the Eagles at 17-1 right now, if you're to place the Super Bowl future, is the addition of Vic Fangio. Everywhere that he's gone, he's made the players that he has better, and there's no reason to see that not continuing. I think that, I know you don't like him, but I think Sirianni's going to leave him alone. Supposedly, Fangio had problems with Miami players towards the end of the season. To me, that reflects on the Miami players and the attitude that their coach is installing, their head coach, and not Fangio as a coach. If you don't want to listen to Vic Fangio, in my mind, you got problems. You got problems. Yeah. This guy's been successful everywhere he went. It's just like if you don't want to listen to Jim Harbaugh, in my mind, you got problems. He's been successful everywhere he went. So I think that's a huge upgrade. I don't know what to make of Kellen Moore, except for the fact that it can't be anything but better. Right?
Yeah.
But you're kind of inheriting that easy situation, right? Almost like dating a girl whose last boyfriend cheated on her every night. Pretty easy to be better. All you got to do is not cheat.
Yeah.
I'm going to take that. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take Patrick Mahomes.
All right. He's still available. We saw Patrick Mahomes struggle a little bit last year with the lack of weapons that he had, but we saw Rashee Rice come alive towards the end of the season. Kelsey's aging a bit, but, Kelsey showed in the playoffs that he could still turn it on if he's needed to. But yeah, I mean, what do you think the Chiefs do in the draft? I think they're gonna try to.
This is why I picked Mahomes. Like I said, this is one of the best wide receiver classes in years, and I think they're going to be able to get viable weapons for him in the second and third rounds. You add that to being tutored by Kelsey, Rashee Rice's development. They have the number one now. You just got to fill in the 2s and 3s. The 1 is the hard to find, right? It's that stud that's hard to find. The second options, the third options, those are littered around the league. So between free agency and the draft, I think this team's going to be a lot more like the high-flying offense that we're used to. I think it's going to be, obviously Mahomes had a fine season, wins and losses. Well, you know what? Their worst winning percentage of his career. But my point is, I expect to see him from a fantasy perspective. I think he's going to be the same player, but I think from a fantasy perspective, the output's going to be a lot more because I do believe that they have the resources to add the rest of these weapons cheap. Because what's going to cost you a lot of money? That number one wide receiver. That's Rashee Rice. So now I can cherry pick for the second and third options in free agency and through the draft. So I think that Chiefs offense is going to look a lot better there. I'm pretty happy getting Mahomes here. I'm looking who's left on the board. I might end up pairing him with Pacheco here for a little stack, but I've talked about running backs falling to me. And this guy already has one. He might leave Pacheco for me. Otherwise, I'm going to take my guy, Kenneth Walker.
We are in the 5th round, and I'm seeing a nice crop of running backs kind of pool there. We got Pacheco, who just got drafted. We got Walker, and we got Jacobs.
Who just got drafted.
Fred, of course, just took Walker, his guy, and now we see Jacobs still there. This is in the 5th round, so there's still plenty of options at running back as you get into that mid 5th round. So just keep that in mind when you're drafting. I went running back heavy at the top, and now I am looking at receivers here. I see Terry McLaurin, and I see Jordan Addison and Jackson Smith and Jigba. I like Jackson Smith and Jigba a lot. He's at 62, and I think that I'm going to go with him on the backside of this, and maybe go with McLaurin or Addison. Well, I can't go McLaurin now, so I'm going to go with Addison here. And sets me up with Higgins and Addison as my wide receivers currently. I'm going to look to grab Jackson Smith and Jigba on the way back and hope that some sort of decline in Tyler Lockett or he gets a bigger role in that offense. Obviously, Jackson Smith and Jigba was the top wide receiver of the past draft class, at least as far as a prospect. He was the top wide receiver. He didn't end up as the top wide receiver because guys like Puka Nacua had a excellent season last year, and Jackson Smith and Jigba really didn't come around until about mid-season. But what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts there? Spread with Smith and Jigba this season.
Yeah, you gotta like him because he's going to continue to improve, and to a certain point, hey, it's cool to be Devontae Adams and get every single target, but it's also cool to be going against weaker corners every time because your opposition has three players to worry about and not just one. So I think you're going to be in a great spot there. Let's see how Seattle's offense turns out. Another tough thing is that you are going against some good defenses. I do think the Rams are a little bit underrated, and of course the 49ers do have that excellent defense. So that's going to be kind of rough from a scheduling perspective, but the fact that you finished third in your division is going to make it a little easier when you're going out of division. Overall, I kind of like that pick. Looking at what's left on the board right now, let me see. I think you're going to have so if this guy doesn't take him, I think you got a good chance because Wood Doggy's got 3 wide receivers already.
Yeah.
Maybe Cambodia takes it. Why did he take 2 tight ends?
This guy just drafted his third quarterback. So we got.
Bro, this is a weird draft. One thing that I'm noticing we're out of practice on, Simon.
Yeah.
You notice that none of us have any correlation at all?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
I was going for Devontae Smith, but he got drafted the pick before me. So I ended up.
But if you look, nobody's correlated.
Yeah.
Like, is there one wide receiver quarterback combo on this whole deal? I think maybe we can start looking into some of that right now.
Okay. So
and getting some later stacks.
Smith and Jigba just fell to me, so I'm going to grab him. And then
I love the fact that you got the best 2 wide. I mean, obviously Nakua ended up, but the best 2 second-year wide receivers from last year's projections. Because I remember Addison and versus JSN was a constant talking point when we were drafting last year. They were right around the same area, and they both, you could say that JSN had a little bit more talent, but you felt that Addison was going into a better situation. So now I'm sitting here. I don't have a tight end. Dalton Kincaid's on the board. That's kind of attractive. At the same time, I only have 1 running back. I talked about Nick Chubb earlier. Why don't I go ahead and pull the trigger on that one? Just the idea that I can get a top 10 talent here.
Yeah, I like that. And it shows how deep the running backs are when you're able to draft Nick Chubb in the 6th round, towards the end of the 6th round. And we still got guys like Aaron Jones, Tony Pollard, and Ramondre Stevenson still on the board, in addition to Austin Eckler. So, I mean, like, Isn't
it crazy how far Eckler fell?
Yeah, this is crazy, the amount of running backs. Now, if I'd have drafted and known this prior to this, like, I probably wouldn't have gone so running back heavy. I would have taken a lesser receiver in those early rounds. But we'll see how the drafts end up. It looks like the receivers, though, are definitely drying up quicker than running backs, as to be expected with the way that people go wide receiver heavy early these days. Spread. We were talking about Tennessee's hire of Callahan a little bit before you got that call. But what were your thoughts there on what he can do for Tennessee?
I think he's going to do a lot, and the fact that he's bringing his dad in to be the offensive line coach, I think helps a lot because that team had problems blocking this year. The question is how much losing Vrabel is going to hurt. That's a tough situation to inherit because I don't think anybody felt last year that the problems around that organization were because of the way that Vrabel's game plans were the coaching or the preparation of that team. I think everybody saw that this is a deficit of talent that came through years of roster mismanagement, whether or not it's trading A.J. Brown. I mean, at that point, they pay the guy whatever he wants. I mean, the guy's proven he can do it. You'll never regret paying an elite player. And I feel that they made that mistake. So overall, I think they are good. I think, let me make a draft pick. Boy, Austin Eckler's still on the board. Yeah. That's insane. I don't even want him, but how can I not take him here?
Right. Now with Austin Eckler, do we? He's a free agent too, I believe. Right? They had him on a franchise tag.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Get 6 seconds.
All right, I'm gonna take Christian Watson.
Yeah, I like that pick. I like Watson. He was obviously hurt for a large part of the season, and I think that is going to kind of squash his value a little bit. So I definitely like the move there. Um, Now I'm looking at tight ends here. I'm looking at Evan Ingram, who I like. I liked David Njoku, but he did much better when Flacco came in as the quarterback than he was with Deshaun Watson earlier in the season. I do like Watson, drafting him as a late round quarterback, depending on how late he goes.
Mm-hmm.
But I am going to go here and go ahead and draft Evan Ingram to give myself a solid tight end to go along with my team. I draft him at the 81st pick. His ADP is 85.
Yeah. What do you think of Jacksonville this year? Now, of course, we talked about all the teams with coaching changes.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's an interesting situation. Obviously, we were so high on them. What were they at one point of the season? I know they only had one loss. It felt like they were like 7-1 or something.
Yeah.
And then they absolutely just fell apart.
I think it was kind of fluky.
Do you think the start was fluky, or the losing streak was fluky?
The losing streak. I think that they're a good team. I just think that they had trouble out of the gate, between the chemistry with Ridley and Lawrence. And then Lawrence, of course, lost Kirk for a big part of that season, and he lost Zay Jones. And those are guys that, like we look at Zay Jones, we don't think much of him, but, Trevor Lawrence, depends on that guy. He's one of his favorite targets. And Zay Jones and Christian Kirk, when they came to the team, they helped that offense out tremendously a couple years ago. And I just think that last year they were slow out of the gate, trying to get in sync. They went on that little win streak after a slow start, but then I think things just caught up to them, and they just couldn't overcome the hurdles. But I do think that they get it together this year, and they have a better season this year.
Simon, I'm going to use the bathroom real quick. Be right back.
Yeah, no worries. So it's coming up on me again. Looking at more running backs pooling here. We got Brian Robinson, Joe Mixon, and Raheem Mostert. Not really interested in Mostert this year. I think he's going to have he's aging too much. He's going to have that decline. Justin Herbert is still available as a quarterback. To give you an idea, we are in the mid-8th round, and Justin Herbert is still available. So there's some recency bias there. As far as who I like, I kind of like Jameson Williams here, but he's pick 100. I'm going to go with DeAndre Swift to give me someone to go along with my Jalen Hurts pick. I don't necessarily like DeAndre Swift so much, but it was a stacking opportunity, and I don't really want to draft anyone else in this range. Mixon, I don't know if he's going to end up on Cincinnati again, and if he does, I don't know. It seemed like they were trying to get away from him last year. Brian Robinson, he was okay last year, not great. And Mostert,
you got to think that Robinson, he's a player that I've targeted. They didn't run the ball at all last year.
Yeah,
maybe they overcorrect, so to speak.
Possible.
Right? First of all, if I'm coming in and I'm an offensive coordinator, and my last offensive coordinator got kicked out for never running the ball. And in fact, as I say that, I'm going to go ahead and draft. Why? So here's the thing. Do I want Robinson, who I'm a little higher on, or do I grab Dobbs, and then is Jordan Love still on the board?
He's a little stacked. I would guess he is.
No, I think he's gone.
No, he's gone. Yep. Looks like he
well,
went
then I'm going to take Brian Robinson.
So Brian Robinson for Spread. Spread did a good job in picking these later round running backs last season.
Oh, my gosh. It gave me Joe Mixon.
Oh, no.
I got to queue up right now so it doesn't happen again.
Are you drafting on your desktop, Spread?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, the thing with with Joe Mixon, like I said, it seemed like they were trying to get away from him. What are your thoughts on Joe Mixon, Spread?
I hate him. That's why I'm so pissed I got him. I think he's done. He's completely done.
Yeah.
The only way he's going to get there is usage. He has no more explosiveness. I thought that Chase Brown looked better towards the end of the year. It seems like it's Chase Brown. I mean, these running backs really got only 4 or 5 years to be studs, and I think he's been in the league about 5 years, right? So
Right.
I'm so disappointed. I would much rather had a player like Brian Robinson, who I believe is younger and also is going to be getting more usage and not yet less usage. Because even if he does go back to Cincinnati, it's going to go to a 50-50, or Chase Brown might take even more of them.
Yeah. Spread is coming up on you. What's going on in your head here?
Oh my gosh. I'm trying to look at guys that I could potentially correlate with. I don't have a lot here of potential correlation, do I? All right, then I'm just gonna go best player available. I feel weird though. I feel like we're just drafting this like a managed league.
Yeah.
Like we have no correlation at all.
Right. I think like the first few drafts that I typically do is just basically figuring out ADP. Like my teams look like a mess usually, the first ones that I draft. But I did do well in big board last year. I think I had the most success in big board out of all the underdog drafts that I did. So I'm just kind of going with it, you know. I'm just kind of going with the recency of the season and guys that I think might be values or whatever, and just kind of hope that all kind of comes together. Right now, I'm looking at Jameson Williams. I thought that he came alive at the end of the season, and I liked how he was kind of meshing with, with Goff there at the end of the season. Other option would be Marquise Brown. I don't know what's happening with Marquise Brown. I think he's a free agent, isn't he, Spread?
I think so.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with Jameson Williams there, just in case Marquise Brown doesn't, we don't know where he's going to.
Can I tell you that I'm shocked that Caleb Williams went ahead of Tua Tagovailoa?
Yeah, that is.
You got to be kidding me. I think Caleb Williams is going to be a way better player. But look at the offenses and look at where they play.
Yeah.
So I guess we haven't done this yet, right? Do you remember last year we had the last 3 weeks memorized?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe if Miami's on the road for the last 3 weeks or something, right? And they're in Buffalo or Pittsburgh, or some terrible places to play.
They're screwed, yeah.
But wow, I mean, if you've heard my content before, I'm not high on Tua as a non-fantasy player. Fantasy-wise, how can you? One of the best schemes, the best weapons. I just don't see how Tua is not a viable fantasy option without injury. And I don't like him as a player. I mean, if this is playoffs best ball, I'd be out. But this is regular season best ball. I'm really surprised to see him there. And here's my guy Chase Brown. All right, let's do both of them.
Spread brings up a good point because we don't have a lot of information right now. We don't know the schedule. We don't know the draft. We don't even know the combine right now. So we're kind of flying blind and kind of going off of our gut a little bit, and going off of just the recency of the season. So
it's basically just the players we like, right? I mean, we're not even correlating.
Right, our correlation.
We're kind of talking through this, and we're. Right. I see what you're saying. You're just getting these things under the belt because not only are we learning the ADP, and this is small sample size, of course, but boy, which other players are popular, right? I mean, I'll tell you what, I'm surprised that Brock Purdy went so high. Like Brock Purdy ahead of Tua. And I'm not talking about as an actual player. I'm just talking about fantasy performance for this season.
Yeah.
That's wild to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And,
I mean, wasn't Tua the number one fantasy quarterback through like 10 or 11 weeks?
He was good, yeah. And I think that's the thing with Tua, though. Like, at the end of the season, like, where he kind of falls down to earth or whatever. He starts the season hot. He goes through a stretch there where Tyreek looked like he was going to crack 2,000 yards. But then some adversity hits, like Tyreek got hurt, Waddle got hurt, and they hit some weather situations. Next thing you know, that Tua looks like an average quarterback. I'm going to draft Goddard here to go with.
I was just going to ask you about him. So break him down. I don't know what to make of it. You have to think though that with Kellen Moore in the fold, who's used the tight ends, in
Right.
both places, so it's not just a personnel deal, right? He had the tight ends being active. You know who was fun? A guy that I was taking a lot in the DraftKings where you get 20 rounds was
Mhm.
Parham, and he made my lineup a couple weeks, right? So
Mhm.
situationally, I think it's a great spot for Goddard. My concern is just like who was the other guy you had before, Ertz. The tight end's almost like running back. These guys get beat down pretty quick.
Yeah, I do like the value of Goddard there. I think
Mm-hmm.
that Moore is definitely an upgrade for Goddard, and I think that Goddard is the number 3 weapon in that offense, in my opinion, as far as beyond the quarterback. So I think that Goddard is going to have a good season this year. I'm bullish on the entire Eagles offense, knowing that Moore is coming in and that Jalen Hurts is not going to have to try to do it all himself. He's going to have some coaching guidance this season, and a guy that's had success with high-powered offenses in Kellen Moore. And I just think that the problem I have with Nick Sirianni is the guy's a goofball, and I don't think that the players respected him. And I think that that was a big problem with their collapse. We saw clips several times of Sirianni just going through the tunnel at Kansas City, like yelling in a high pitched voice at the Kansas City fans. It just seemed really, really lame, to be honest with you. Like, and I don't like the guy. He just like he rubs me the wrong way. And
One
then
thing I would caution you on that though, Simon, is
yeah,
we're also older.
yeah.
And you got to think that plays better to 23 and 24 year olds than it
But
does to
here,
us. And a lot of times
yeah.
there's guys that they look bad from the outside, but on the inside they have a lot of support. So I'd be
So
curious
yeah,
how they really feel about him.
there
My
was
issues with him wasn't being liked by the players. I simply felt he made bad decisions.
a point during the season where AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts were arguing, and
Uh-huh.
Nick Sirianni came in there and tried to smooth it over. And AJ Brown was interviewed after that, and he said they asked him, "Well, what about Coach Sirianni like trying to smooth it?" He's like, "He made things worse." Like just little things like that. Like you notice when you
Hey,
follow
real
a team
quick,
closely.
Dalton Schultz or Luke Musgrave?
Uh, Schultz.
Okay.
Yeah, Schultz for me. Like I just like CJ Stroud.
That's a tough decision though, don't you think?
Yeah,
Musgrave really came on at the end of the year.
Musgrave came on, but he did have a little bit of competition there in the other rookie tight end. Remember? Because Musgrave
Yeah,
got
I
hurt.
can't remember his name, but he was
Yeah,
a darling in all the drafting leagues at the single day because he was
yeah,
priced so cheaply, right?
right, right.
Yeah.
So I mean, he did come on, but he did have some issues. Uh, right now, it's coming up on me, and I see Judy, who I don't like. I see
I don't
Musgrave.
take him.
I already have
I
two
like
tight
Musgrave.
ends.
Okay.
I see Cooks. I don't know what's happening with Cooks this year yet. I'm gonna have to go
I
down a
don't
little
hate
bit.
Cousins.
What do you think of? I kind of like Wicks, but yeah, oh man, I like Cousins too. I'm gonna leave Cousins for you since you already have.
I already have two
Um,
quarterbacks though.
yeah. Oh, you got two
I
quarterbacks
took
already.
Goff.
Yeah, I ended up going with Wicks. I think Wicks has a lot of upside, but I think a lot of that, like was had to do with player injuries and stuff. But maybe he comes through for me. I'm going to start looking at quarterback though. Now that I'm thinking about it a little bit harder, I'm gonna go with Deshaun Watson if it comes back to me, just because I think he's a lot of upside for a B2. When he did
Boy,
play
I really
this
struggle
season,
with that pick there.
which one?
Watson.
Watson.
I
When
see a
he
couple players below him that I kind of like better. Specifically Baker,
Yeah, oh, that's
Gino.
true. Yeah, Rogers is
Uh,
still on there too. Like, yeah, no, you're right. There are some better players. I just like Watson upside in that offense. I think that like when he was healthy and he was playing, he played. Despite all the negativity of everybody saying that he played like crap. Like when you look at the fantasy stats, he was putting up. He had several games where he put up 20 DraftKings points.
yeah,
You know,
maybe I'm just going off the tape because I wasn't impressed at all.
yeah. Now, Baker, I'm concerned with losing Canales, and I don't know what's going to happen with Evan.
You don't even know
with
where he's going to
Evans.
be either.
Exactly. Yeah,
So
and
it could be
Rogers.
good though. Like, what if he ends up in Atlanta?
Yeah, I like Rogers and Cousins, but they're coming off of Achilles.
I don't like
Drake
Rodgers.
May, Drake May would be the other guy, and I just
Kind of
don't
like
know.
Drake May here. I
Yeah,
think I
I
like
don't,
Drake May more
right.
um, than Deshaun.
So you think he gets drafted? What, like second
He's going. He's
overall,
going to. He's going to Washington.
going to Washington?
Yeah, I did a show with Meg yesterday. I can't believe she
Yeah,
doesn't just see that. Like it's a no brainer. It's like the easiest pick to make.
yeah. I got to go with go with Watson here.
All right,
Like
we'll see.
my
We
pick
can
one.
revisit this
Yeah,
one, Simon,
yeah,
because
yeah, yeah,
I'll put it here now, and we can have a little friendly wager.
yeah.
I'll wager that Drake
May?
May has more fantasy points by the end of the year than
Yeah,
Deshaun Watson.
yeah. I
And
can.
and and
Yeah,
what's his name disagrees with me because he took him right after you did.
yeah. I can
Favorito.
I can see that for sure. I
Mm-hmm.
just think that with Deshaun Watson, the team is built for Deshaun Watson. Like they're an established team. They're going to be in contention. They're going to be in a competitive division because we're looking at like the Bengals, the Steelers. The Steelers is another team that we got to talk about. Spread with Arthur Smith as the offensive coordinator. What are your thoughts on Arthur Smith? What's he going to do for this offense? We saw him have success with running Derrick Henry 30 times a game, and then he got a head coaching job, and he was a disaster for the Falcons. But now he joins the Steelers. We know that they want to take a run heavy approach. But what's your thoughts here?
I'm not as down on Arthur Smith as the rest of you guys. Now, remember, a majority of my football focus is simply on betting, winning and losing, covering the spread. And this is more of something fun for me to do since I spend so much time on it. I might as well.
Yeah.
I'm not as down as on Arthur Smith as everyone else when it comes to being an offensive coordinator. The difference between being a head coach and an offensive coordinator is huge. And there's so many people, Vic Fangio, for example, with your Philadelphia Eagles. Here, let me get it right for the next pick and break it down. But overall, I drafted Pat Freiermuth while you were going on Arthur Smith. I think he's going to be great as the Pittsburgh Steelers head coach as long as they give him a quarterback to work with. I don't think that even Ben Johnson could have made Desmond Ridder look good, or Bobby Slowick, or whoever your favorite OC is. So he was working behind the 8 ball there, and when you can't get drives going, it's hard to get these guys all the touches they need. When you're going 3-and-out, I mean, how do I give Bijan the ball when I'm constantly punting? So I feel like a lot of the criticism was based off fantasy football and not his actual job as a head coach. I don't think anybody could have succeeded under Desmond Ridder. That being said, if they bring it back Kenny Pickett or go get someone that I don't like, could be another issue here. So we'll wait and see. But I did just draft Freiermuth right there. Boy, Darren Waller fell so far.
Yeah, he is falling far.
All these
And we got guys like Lad. Like, what do you know of Lad McConkey? Is he?
I don't know anything about these.
Yeah.
I haven't done any draft prep yet, and I don't really watch that much college football.
About 5 seconds.
All right. I'm playing it safe. Cade Otton. So I went 3 tight ends, but that's because I waited so long.
Yeah, I don't hate
You see what I'm
that.
saying? Like, I'm going tight end roulette. It's not like Kelsey set it and forget it.
Right.
I'm assuming these guys are going to spike into my lineup week after week. And since my first one was picked at 125, it's going to be a tight end by committee for me. Obviously, the strength of this team, I got to go back to running backs now. You know what? I'm going to start jumping in on some of these rookies. Because I think that's the only way I'm going to get. So I love the quarterbacks, Mahomes and Goff. I mean, that's going to be great. There could be weeks where I have 2 of the top 5 scores, right? And one of them is not even in play. Running back is a serious deficit for me, which sucks because last year on Underdog, I was much better at drafting running backs. So I need to get that strategy better. Love these wide receivers. Jefferson, Ayuk, Waddle, Christian Watson, and Deontay Johnson's my 5th one. I feel like I did a great job there, and I'm comfortable with this tight end by committee. So now what I'm going to do for the rest of this is Probably take a shot and a late round third quarterback. How many picks do we have left total? I have. Well, we still got a lot. Did we do more this year? They moved it up to 20 this year?
Yeah, well, they move it up to 20 for the big board because we don't know bye weeks and
So, and then
stuff.
we're
But
going 17 on the one that starts in April.
yeah, it'll go back to, I think it's 18 for the regular ones. Yeah.
I thought it was 17, but okay, cool. I thought it was 3 more on DraftKings for some reason.
Yeah, no, it's I think it's usually
I
18.
love DraftKings on the 20 where I just love throwing away that last pick. I mean, I'm scrolling down for guys with like the 500 ADP.
Someone grabbed Lad McConkey. I like the name of Lad McConkey. I don't know if he's any good or not. I've heard some analysts talking about him, and I mean, I'm in spread situation. We got to do a little bit more research on these rookies, but I have heard some buzz
I
on
mean,
Lad
and a lot
McConkey.
of it is fit as well, right?
Yep, exactly.
I mean, if you're a running back and you get drafted to Atlanta, you're probably not going to get a lot. If you get drafted to Cincinnati, you're going to have a great chance to get a ton of carries, right?
Yep.
Because Chase Brown's going to take some of Mixon's, but it looks like they're ready to move on. A situation like Green Bay, where Aaron Jones, he's going to miss a lot of time. I think that he's a guy that's vulnerable there. If he gets drafted to the Jets, probably won't get a lot of run. Bills, feels like Cook is there. So a lot of this is who's going to get drafted to be that workhorse, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I would say I would want my team to get drafted to Houston. I wasn't necessarily Singletary did fine, but do you think they would upgrade there? And Damian Pierce got all my guys.
Oh, you're up spread.
Yeah, I think I'm just gonna screw around with one of these guys that I don't even know. I mean, his name's Audric Estime. He's a rookie, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna just try and screw around with some of these rookie running backs and see if I can fill in because that's the major weakness of this team. I mean, if Nick Chubb isn't back, I mean, I'm kind of dead in the water here.
That's where I start to depend a little bit on ADP when I kind of trust the field when we get into these late rounds with some of these rookies.
Mm-hmm.
If I haven't done my research yet, I'll kind of look and see where the ADP is on some of these guys, and then just kind of trust it, you know.
I mean, look at this. Like a guy like Miles Sanders was in the 60s last year. He's at 197.
Yeah. Spread.
AJ Dillon's at 203.
What do you think? What do you think of the situation with the New England Patriots? Because we haven't covered that yet. They have the number 3 overall pick. They got a new head coach in Jerod Mayo, the former New England linebackers coach, bringing in Alex Van Pelt as the OC, former Cleveland OC, and DeMarcus Covington as the DC. He's the New England Patriots defensive line coach.
So the advantages there is the continuity. Hold on, let me set up this
Yeah.
next pick here.
Sure.
Let me see. What do I have? I got 2, 4, 5, 3. I can do anything I want. So I need a running back though. So the question is, do I want to take someone who's established like Zach Moss, or do I just take a flyer on someone I've never heard of? I'll probably just take Marshawn Lloyd. I'm going to take flyers here, Simon. I think that's the only way this team competes. All right, so now back to my New England breakdown.
Yep.
Positives, continuity. I mean, not only did Jerod Mayo coach under Belichick, he played under Belichick. So I think that the defensive system's going to be the same. I think this helps a lot. My concern for this team is the spoiled fan base. Because these guys expect to win all the time.
Mm.
And I don't think they understand how a rebuild works. And that you're going to be bad for a while. They are the huge question mark in the draft. Because they obviously need a quarterback. But do we really want to use the number 3 overall draft capital on Jaden Daniels, who, let's be honest, boomer bust potential all over the place, right? I mean, the guy could either be a rookie of the year candidate or he could be absolutely like a Justin Fields all over again, right? Where it's one read and tuck and cool for fantasy, but not that good for winning games. It's such a tough decision. So do you roll the dice on Jaden Daniels? And I guess it has a lot to do with it. But the other two players there at your position, to me, are as close to as can't miss as you can get. I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr. is probably the best wide receiver prospect in the last 5 years, which is crazy seeing how we had like Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase and all these guys come out. So it feels like a can't miss. Also have Joe Alt on the board, who feels like just a can't miss left tackle and potential to be a top 5 left tackle. So the Patriots, to me, are really like a wild card in this whole deal. Swinging it back around, boy, so if they get Marvin Harrison, I don't want Marvin Harrison,
No,
right? If
no,
they got a quarterback, I do want Ramondre Stevenson
yeah,
because I think that they're going to run the ball a lot, and if the quarterback is able to move the ball and keep the chains moving, you're going to get that Ramondre season of 2 years ago, which had him drafted at around 29 ADP last year, if I remember correctly. I know it was right around the term between the second and the third rounds where you're able to get Stevenson here. So I think they're a huge wild card in this whole deal. I think that they made a good decision. I also feel that the spoiled fan base is going to work against Jerod Mayo because I think they're going to expect him to come in and turn this team around right away. They're
yeah,
in one of the toughest divisions, and they have a talent deficit from letting Belichick draft for all these years. And Belichick's bad drafting was masked by his elite development. So he was able to basically take guys that shouldn't be in the NFL in the 4th round and make them complete players. Is Mayo going to be able to do that? Maybe. But the team doesn't have a lot of talent, and I'm worried that fan base turns against Mayo too early. They are the big wild card in this draft. I feel like it's just a lock that it goes Williams, May, number 1, 1, 2, May, Williams, and then what is New England going to do? Okay, so I'm on the clock now. Boy, J.K. Dobbins is here. Player I loved last year, Jalen Hyatt. He didn't do much for me. I'm going to go with Dobbins.
yeah. I went with Hill a couple picks ago, or a pick with my last pick.
I mean, who knows what to do with these Baltimore running backs,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I saw somebody had grabbed Edwards too. I was looking at Edwards, and I was like realizing that he slowed down significantly towards the end of the season, and we saw Hill kind of coming alive towards the end of the season. So that kind of made me think that maybe Hill was breaking out a little bit, and we
Yeah.
don't know the situation with Dobbins. So I was just kind of leaning Hill there because they were really giving Hill like a significant amount of carries.
Yeah, I like Hill better than the other two the guys you mentioned as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we're moving on to like maybe some of these offensive coordinators, we had Cleveland picked up Ken Dorsey, formerly of Buffalo. Cincinnati picked up Dan Pitcher. I'm not sure where he came from.
Doesn't
Buffalo,
matter. He doesn't call plays.
gotcha. Buffalo picks up, they solidify Joe Brady as their OC, and the Bears bring in Shane Waldron. Any of those do anything for you? Spread?
I don't like Ken Dorsey, and it
Yeah,
sucks because he's a NorCal guy, and I wanted him to be good.
yeah,
But if you look at what the offense was before he got there, then the offense while he was there, and then the offense after he left, doesn't say a lot, right?
right.
I mean, they were significantly worse under Ken Dorsey.
Yeah,
Now, to be fair, Stefanski's an offensive mind, right?
yes,
So
yeah,
it's a little different than when you're coaching for Sean McDermott and you have full control over, you run the offense. I'm going to draft Michael Penix here.
okay.
I also like Bo Nix as well. This is crazy getting 20 picks on Underdog. So I don't really like the Dorsey pickup. Who were the other ones you mentioned? The Cincinnati one, I don't know a lot about, but like I said, Taylor calls the plays anyways. I love Joe Brady. I think he's like a top 5, top 10 guy. Shane Waldron, right? You got to think you can't necessarily downgrade him. Yeah, I think that's an upgrade there for Chicago. But was the problem Getsy or was the problem Fields? And we'll find out this year.
Yeah, yeah. I went ahead and drafted Russell Wilson there. I think
I
when
don't
you're
hate
getting
that. If he
him,
lands in Atlanta, you're set.
yeah, 17th round for Russell Wilson. I mean, he's got potential to land somewhere good. So I like that value there.
Yeah, I like it too.
Um, Up in 6 picks, I'm looking at Jalen Hyatt as my next one.
Yeah.
I like his upside in New York. He started to show some flashes towards the mid to end of the season. Only question there is like who the quarterback is going to be. Obviously, well, Daniel Jones is probably going to be the quarterback, but he's been kind of a mess. So who knows how long he's going to hold on to that starting role. What are your thoughts there, Spread, on New York's quarterback situation?
Mm, seems like they got to draft one, right?
Yeah, draft one or well, I guess you can't really trade for a veteran because they got the salary constraints. Were they paying Daniel Jones like 40 million?
Yeah, that's the worst contract in the league.
Yep.
Yeah. Russ is the only veteran that I could see them in the mix for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. I've got 4 running backs. I may just start hitting some running backs here because I'm seeing Will Shipley is a rookie. I don't know anything about him, but he's he's available. Um, Kenneth Gainwell and Alexander Madison. I'm not really excited about either of those guys. Zeke is at 212 ADP. He's interesting. He had a decent year filling in when Ramondre was hurt. Then we got guys like Chris Rodriguez who showed some flashes for Washington, and just guys like that. I'm trying to see if there's anyone else interesting. Tank Bigsby
I
is
think at
back
this
there.
point with running backs, I think we should only draft rookies.
Yeah, I think so too. I just looking at him, I don't really see
Like, who do
upside
you
in the
want
other
up here?
guys.
Tank Bigsby? Like, no way.
No. I'll take my chances with Will Shipley and hope that he ends up being a good one. I think I probably want to get another tight end as well because I got 2 right now, and I don't want to get stuck in a situation where they end up in the same bye week, and I end up having to take a 0 at tight end. So I'm going to take my chances and try to draft a third tight end, I think. Let's see, and we got tight end
Uh,
options, kind of thin as we go further here. Um, Noah Font is probably the guy I'd lean towards. He looks like the best guy on the on the board. Jonnu Smith is interesting in Atlanta. We saw him have a decent workload, but I think that now that they have new coaching staff, that Jonnu was one of Arthur Smith's guys from back in Tennessee. So
yeah.
not really sure where he's going to end up.
I'm done with tight ends. There's none of these guys that I want.
Yeah, you going to go with Bo Nix on your next one, Spread?
I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, this is where having a
I just don't
knowledge
know if
of
I even need it.
yeah.
I mean, I'm pretty happy with my quarterbacks.
Yeah, if you have 3 quarterbacks, I don't think you need a fourth.
Yeah,
But
I
if
think
you
I'm
if
gonna.
you
I think I'm gonna stay away. I have one kind of long shot pick in Penix,
yeah,
but I think Goff and Mahomes. I think I'll be fine.
yeah,
I think I'm gonna continue to just shore up. I'm pretty happy with my tight ends too. I have 3 to cycle through. That's fine.
yeah.
So I'm just gonna take best available wide receiver and running back from here on out. Unless
Nice.
I don't know, maybe in the
Yeah,
last pick I'll take a quarterback or something.
yeah. Yeah, I'm not seeing a lot of great names as we get to the deep end of the pool here. Rashad Bateman is interesting, but we've seen him struggle. Josh Reynolds is definitely interesting. Josh
I
Reynolds,
like Reynolds more than Bateman.
yeah, I like him too. Not really sure what's happening in Detroit with the draft. Like if they'll try to get more help in the wide receivers. Darnell Mooney is still around. Odell Beckham, not really interested there. KJ Osborne.
Isn't Beckham going to retire?
I mean, I would guess so. Like after how he looked.
I thought he said last year was going to be his last year.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, that would make a lot of sense. Michael Thomas is still available, but we don't know what his situation is. And then just a bunch of names that I never heard of. Oh,
At
Cedric
this point,
Tillman.
I'm going rookies.
Yeah. Cedric Tillman is interesting. He's a late pick. I'm going with Cedric Tillman, I think, on my next pick. That'll help out with my Cleveland stack. Spread, who are you seeing that interests you, like with these remaining guys?
That aren't rookies. I mean, at this point, so Frank Gore, just because I know the name. I think Madison's got to be intriguing just for a spike week or two here. I don't really want Zeke, but boy, Jawan Jennings, that's kind of interesting, right? I mean, he had a pretty good Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't hate that pick. Noah Gray, with Kelsey getting older, I mean, you're basically just betting on him getting hurt, but I'd say at that point it's like 50-50. Dawson Knox, I'm not really too interested in, not Lazard. Yeah, not a lot, which is why I think I'd rather just take shots on rookies. Like, who am I really looking at that... I mean, where's my Puka Nacua? Where's my Kyron Williams, right? I mean, it's tough to see here. Michael Gallup, he was a player I had. Rondale Moore, still available. Yeah, for our first run through, this is kind of tough drafting these last rounds.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because it's like there's probably a lot of guys when we're not scrolling down far enough that we'd be like, oh, why didn't I draft him? But you really got to.
I don't know. I'm scrolling down pretty far, and I'm like, what am I going to grab? Daniel Bellinger. I mean, I'm past the point. I'm at the players that aren't getting drafted. Their ADP is 239.8.
I'm seeing Taysom Hill is now a quarterback, so he doesn't have that tight end designation that we like. That's disappointing.
Yeah, Cam Akers. I mean, if you guess you don't take a shot, I don't know.
Yeah, Darrington Evans on Buffalo. That's not really interesting.
Renfro's down here. Maybe you could spike in your lineup.
Yeah.
I don't want Chase Claypool. I don't want Mike Jones. I don't want Juju. I want Greg Dortch. Kadarius Toney.
Yeah. Kadarius Toney, man. How do you screw that up? But we ask ourselves that a lot with some of these receivers. Like I'm looking at Chase Claypool down here too. Just like some of these guys, man. Calvin Austin is an interesting name to me. Calvin Austin on Pittsburgh. He showed some flashes. And as I'm scrolling down, it's my turn to draft right now. I'm not really seeing anyone else that I like. Oh, you know what? I kind of like Trenton Irwin, especially if T. Higgins ends up off the team.
That's a good call.
I'm going to go with Trenton Irwin there. He's one that you have to scroll way down for. And then we got Spread coming up with his final pick.
How did Madison fall so far?
Just because, he had that starting job and he didn't do anything with it, So it looks like, and then that rookie came in and had a couple good games there. I can't remember the rookie's name, but yeah, he looked pretty decent when he got his opportunities.
Yeah, I'll probably just take another rookie then for my last pick.
Yeah, so reminder to hit like button, everybody. Looking for about 20 likes to put out like some of these on the radar videos, these shorts that I put out where I focus on individual players to draft. Also, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube page. Looking to get about 600 subscribers by the end of let's say the end of March. I'm at 500 now, so I definitely appreciate the help with that. and I appreciate the help throughout the season with getting it up to 500. That was a big goal of mine to hit that 500 mark, and we ended up getting there. So definitely appreciate the help with that. Spread, where can they? I'll let you draft first.
I already did.
Oh, did you draft?
I took
Okay,
Frank Gore Jr. just off
yeah.
name value. I
Spread,
have
where
no
where
idea about him.
where can they find your content and keep track of what you got going on?
Yeah, at Spread a Stare on Twitter/X. Mainly NBA right now. I got a little vacation right now, Simon. I'm going to go actually get some outdoor time after this with no
Nice.
NBA to prepare for. But the NBA content will be coming. Probably do move into a little bit of tennis here as well, but I've kind of been avoiding it because I need to watch the games, and I can't do it on numbers. And then, of course, we're going to continue to pump out this best ball content. And all today's exercise did, Simon, was make me more excited to go back and try this again. What I learned from today is I need to go through and check out their ADPs, and I need to start mapping correlations
Yeah,
because I felt that was my major failure today, was just failure to correlate here. Pretty happy though with my draft to get Jefferson, Ayuk, and Waddle in the first 3 rounds and pair them with Mahomes and Goff. Feel pretty strong about that. Obviously, my weakness was in the running back position. So another thing I learned is that I need to be attacking that early. Most likely, I should have taken Saquon instead of Waddle. Looking how my team turned out, so wide receiver heavy. So probably need to prioritize running backs more. But overall, this was a great time, and I can't wait to knock out some more of these with you.
yeah. I
And
like
maybe
I
learn
like
who
your
some of these rookies are that we drafted.
yeah, yeah. And I'm gonna have Meg on the show early next week, and maybe she can shed some light on that because I know she does a pretty good job of breaking down some of these rookies. Um, as far as my team, I got Jameer Gibbs and Kyron Williams as my first two picks in the draft. Ended up going Jalen Hurts from there. So I waited pretty long to hit my first wide receiver, but I hit T. Higgins. T. Higgins situation, he might get traded. He might end up a wide receiver one somewhere. So he won't have the same competition that he had trying to face off against Jamar Chase for targets. And then I got Jordan Addison, who Spread and I talked about. We both like Jordan Addison and Jackson Smith and Jigba as year two wide receivers. I got Evan Ingram as my main tight end. DeAndre Swift, I went with my RB3. So I got three solid running backs, depending on how DeAndre Swift does this season under Kellen Moore. Jamison Williams, Dontavian Wicks. I took some stabs there with wide receiver, and then I got Dallas Goedert as a second good tight end, and also correlation with that Jalen Hurts pick. Then I went with Deshaun Watson, Josh Palmer. I like Josh Palmer's situation, especially if they end up getting rid of Williams or if they end up getting rid of Allen. We've seen Josh Palmer step up and get a lot of targets, and he's done well. Elijah Moore, I grabbed him to go with my Deshaun Watson correlation. I had Treylon Burks, who I was able to grab pretty late in the 15th round. We've seen him kind of fail in his first two seasons, but he's got the upside. Justice Hill, I went from there. Russell Wilson, Will Shipley, I have no idea who Will Shipley is. And then I went Cedric Tillman to go with that Cleveland correlation, and then Trenton Irwin.
All
So
right.
overall,
Yeah,
we'll,
we
we'll
got a
kind of
lot of
see.
learning to do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for sure. We got to get familiar with these ADPs, and at the very least, we hope that we gave you some insight into the coaching situations and how Spread and I are kind of thinking on the coaching situations here. It's going to be an interesting season. A lot of defensive-minded coaches coming into the head coaching arena, and then we got a lot of change at offensive coordinator throughout the league. So it should be interesting to see what happens with these offenses, and just keep in mind it's very important these coaching changes that are made. They affect the offense a ton, and you got to pay attention to the type of head coaches that are taking teams over and the offensive coordinators that they bring in, especially if they have a defensive minded coach.
Yeah, and so it's just going to be more and more fun as this offseason continues to flesh out. How long do we have until free agency, Simon?
I think it happened. Does it happen like right before the combine, or I mean the
They've
draft,
changed.
or after it?
So now it's before the draft, I believe.
Okay. So
Yeah.
the
I'll
next
look
big
it up
thing
right
we
now.
got, yeah, we got the combine at the end of February, so that's going to be a huge piece of the puzzle. And then I think from
Do
the
you like it?
combine,
I think the combine's a bunch of smoke.
oh, it's a bunch of smoke, but I like the theatrics of it. I think like I like the hype around it, and just I'm being football pretty much my main sport, and pretty much my only sport that I really follow. I like to have something to follow throughout the year, so I kind of like the stuff like the combine and everything like that.
All right. So NFL free agency, the players can sign on March 13th.
Okay.
And the draft is on April 26th.
Yep. So yeah, that makes sense. Like February, we got the combine. March, we got the free agency, and then we got, of course, the draft in April. And then from there, we get all sorts of different pieces of news coming in. We got training camps starting. How are the players performing with their quarterbacks, or how are these rookies going to do? We start getting all the pieces of the puzzle throughout the summer. So these drafts will be evolving. ADP will be evolving throughout the year. You're going to want to open up an Underdog account so you can do these big board drafts and these drafts coming up. Use the promo code SEEK. Hit me up on Twitter. I'll get you my rankings when I have those ready to go, and then that will give you some sort of guidance throughout your ADP and drafting and whatnot. So make sure to do that. And they will match you. Underdog will match you up to $100 on your first deposit on a new account. In addition to that, just use that promo code SEEK, SEEK, and we will see you guys next time. Thanks, Fred.
All right. Can't wait.